Okay.
Uh-oh, don't stand there.
It's like the technical.
Gotta turn it on.
And I am the technical difficulty. You should know that right now. All right, I can stand back further so that this can't see me as well.
Won't hear you either.
Well, sure it will. Hi. So, I've been touched by all of what has been said and done. It's hard to overcome that. I'm not going to even try. I wanted to do my testimony for a couple reasons, maybe three. It won't be a 3-point message I'm going to give, but it might. Can't promise. The first one is because I wanted your congregation to know who I am and where I came from. There's a good reason why I think Chance and I got connected. It isn't just the fact that his uncle was one of our deacons for years. It probably was that a little bit. But it also, he and I share some similarities in some of our past. And I am at the point in my life where there's only, besides myself, one other person in this room knows what I was like before. And neither one of us wants to remember that. Because I wasn't a very good person. I'm not really anyway. I'm not. Deep down, if it wasn't for Jesus in me, I wouldn't have anything. I'm not a good person. I am rotten to the core. And the moment I continue to think that I am anything but that will be the day that I have taken the wrong step. I was raised in a Christian home, pastor's house, as my children even know, and I think it's a lot easier now than it was then, but there were a lot, you lived in a glass house. You were under scrutiny from people and including your family. And you felt the pressure yourself. You wanted to conform to some degree. You wanted to survive. I was in a church and I learned how to survive. I learned how to pretend what I was and what I was not. And I don't know if any of you have ever gone through that, but when you're churched and you're not a Christian, you're pretending a lot. You're acting as if everything is okay. You're trying to reveal a part of you. You think you're pretending and presenting as if you're okay, but a lot of times, including your own family, they knew you weren't. But you're fooling yourself. You certainly wasn't fooling most people, and you were definitely not fooling God. And so I spent a lot of time in my childhood pretending. I went forward at the age of 7, not because I wanted to follow Jesus, but because I wanted to follow my friends. I didn't want to be left out of the juice and cracker club. I knew that would look bad for those of you who don't know that, we take the Lord's Supper and we used to do it with grape juice and cracker crumbs. And I didn't want to be left out of that. That would look weird, especially coming from the pastor's house. So I wanted to be part of that. I didn't want to miss out. Since my friends left me behind, I thought I needed to follow up next Sunday. So I kind of went through all that, and I thought I was kind of making it through. We moved to Montana not long after that. I grew up there, so I understood the West more than I understood from where I was born. In fact, when we went back to Kansas City, when I went to seminary, it's another story. It was like going to a foreign country. The Midwest is not Wyoming, it's not Montana, it's not the West. It is a far different thing, with different expectations. I heard words that I never heard before in great regularity on the playground in my grade school. And I thought that was great. I couldn't even say near that at home. I couldn't bring it home either. But there were just things that were different about our culture that I had to learn to pretend to, because my dad was the pastor and all these people in the school thought I had to be a certain way. In fact, I even got picked out a couple of times because my behavior didn't match my status. And so I had to learn a lot of that. I was short and small, a lot smaller, okay? I know that's hard to believe. But I developed a lot of shame around that. And I was picked on a little bit about that. I learned to tease and I learned to joke in order to let people laugh at other people besides me. That was another way I deflected and dealt with the kind of feelings I had about myself. One day I was a teenager and I was introduced, I won't tell you who, but I was introduced to some mind-altering substances at 12. And I didn't do it for very long, but I remembered what it did for me. I stored that up. So when that source went away, but some of the problems returned later in high school, and I found it again, I remembered what it did. That memory didn't go away. In fact, it helped because it made me want it even more, even the lapse in time. The older I got, sometimes I could go without it, but I remember coming back from the military. I had to get to school, college somehow. So I enlisted in the Guard. And while I was away for about 6 months, I came back, and I remember coming back and I had to drink every night to go to sleep. I don't know if any of you done that. But I was the kind of person, I could keep a job. Not much of one, but I could keep one. I couldn't really deal with relationships well. I tried, but, on the outside, I looked like everything was going okay. But on the inside, I wasn't. I was trying to cope with the stress and the feelings of not measuring up and all the other stuff that you fuel, including the resentments and the anger and the feelings that come along later as you start piling on consequences to your behavior. Then all of a sudden, I'm starting to drink more. And then I met someone before, Kim, who allowed me to do more off the outside. She would hint that maybe that's not a good idea, but I didn't really listen, and she put up with it. And then I met Kim, and she found that my behavior was not normal. Even more than what I really am now. She pointed out that people don't do what I do. They don't start drinking at a tailgate party at 9 o'clock in the morning. They don't start smoking weed with their friends on the porch every single night if they could. If you could afford it. And there were other things. And I knew from that moment I had to hide my behavior. I learned that before. I grew up with that. I knew exactly how to pretend. And I imagine she probably wanted to overlook some of it, but she knew there was something wrong. More than just that. But the bottom line was that she started focusing in on it. She helped me focus in on what was wrong. We didn't make it too far down marital bliss before we started kind of having issues. And there was a suggestion maybe you ought to go back to church. This was made by a counselor who happened to be a Christian. I say that because I think he snuck that in there on me. But so we went back and she came to Christ. And I came to, oh no, not again. So shortly thereafter, I went back out and we separated for a bit. We both thought maybe this was it. We're going to go our separate ways. We're going to find people like us. We're going to live our lives and everything will be cool. Well, God didn't have that plan, obviously. We're still here. We have 6 more children as a result of that. And by the grace of God. I don't say that flippantly. We had our coming back together. We sort of I went back to the 12-step thing, and I'm not knocking it totally, but it got me through that period of time, but I still went back out. In that interim, I had been introduced to some other, and I'm not going to make it to the 10 minutes, so you just put minus from this on out. Like we all thought that was going to happen, right? So anyway, I was introduced to some good Christian men for the very first time in my life. And I don't mean that I didn't know any. I finally knew some that had real flesh and bones problems like me. And I was able to talk to them. And that got me started on the right track, if you will. Now, I believe I came to Christ prior to that. But I never really felt community with men, especially godly men. Never. And I needed that. As Christians, we need that whether we like it or not. We need other people, whether we like it or not. And it might as well be healthy. Because I was getting community in a bar and with my friends in the garage and those kind of things, but that's not healthy community. When I came and I really came to Christ, I had to put all those people behind me. And that was unfortunate for them in a sense, but it was necessary for me. Now, one of them came back into my life, scared the living daylights out of me last summer. I'm not going to go into that. If y'all want to hear that, I'll let you know about it. But it happened. And it was another thing where he came to Christ in the interim. And it's just, now we're waiting for our other friend to get it. And we'll be complete in Christ. That would be so cool. So anyway, so a few years back, when I came to the pastor, I'm jumping ahead because I'm running out of time. I took a refocusing class, which I probably need right now. The class helped us to kind of put our lives back in a biblical perspective. It was trying to show how God uses events in your life to shape you. And there are challenges, there are things of integrity, like should I take that or not? Should I leave it behind? Should I not leave the store without it? You know, those kinds of things. I mean, it's like, those are life checks that you have to deal with. And as you're growing up in Christ, you had to kind of classify all those things together. And I remember thinking when I first did it, this was about 21 years ago, you're always further ahead in these things than you think you are than you really are. And I came to that realization. I always looked at my life prior to that point where I really had to surrender, that I was running from God. My whole life, whole youth, I was running from God. But when I finally came to Christ, and even the first couple years when I'm feeling it out, I started running to Him. And I thought, after that couple of years, that I was actually running with Him. But what I really found out was there's a few more years that I was still trying to run to Him. Because even as we become faithful, and part of the faithful, we have to learn to walk by faith. And part of that is, it's like being a kid. Kids run when they get in trouble, and they do because they get in trouble, and we do that. It's not that we don't do it later on. It's that usually we figure it out a little sooner. And I'd like to think that we're missing a few of those bumps that we used to hit. It's amazing to me that more than half of my life I've spent sober. Now, why do I tell you all that? Because if I can do it, anybody can. If I can make it to here, I heard that testimony. He did it in 1 minute. I could do it in 12 and a half. He found a Gideon Bible, and that's what triggered it for him. That isn't what triggered it for me. I heard a story on Moody Radio, and I fell on my face before God, and I said, Lord, if you just give me a moment's peace, I'll serve you the rest of my life. I've been paying the price of that one ever since. That was in Christmas Eve, 1995. I'm telling you, there is no reason for me to be here but by the grace of God. And if I ever forget that, that's the other reason I'm telling you that. Because I don't need to just tell you where I'm coming from, because I believe God put us together so that we could do something in this community. I believe that happened because God had it in mind all along. And if I ever forget that, I might think I'm something when I'm nothing. Because none of us are anything. Nothing. But God is everything. And when we ever forget, if we ever would get that through our heads, it might make life easier. But we're not that way. We think evil all the time, always. It's not, I don't say that in terms of, we're burning things and worshiping idols and things, at least the kinds that you used to. But I say that when we put ourselves first, that's our idol. And everything about religion is about building and fashioning God in your own image. But this is not an image. We were made in his image, fashioned for a relationship with him. And there is no other reason to exist in this world but for that. And if we'd ever get that through our heads, we'd make it a lot easier on ourselves. So I give you my testimony. I left a lot of stuff out. We didn't have that much time. Usually I take longer, so maybe one of these days. But I do want to say, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you. Thank you for allowing me to serve in this capacity. I want to be able to serve all of you as the pastor of the church, but more importantly as his under shepherd. And the day I forget that will be the day I won't be serving anybody but me. So, thank you. I think I stayed in front of her.